welcome back. And we're moving into our first conversation this morning about a number of issues. We have with us on set Senator Eamon Courtenay, who's also a senior counsel as well. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Marlene. Glad to be here.
Well, it's good to have you here as well, and of course to be able to discuss a number of issues. But I think the first that seems to be most relevant is the recent announcement or resolution coming out of the Bar Association. As a member of the legal fraternity, obviously, we depend on the Bar Association and senior officials like yourself to be able to dissect the issue. And we're starting off, of course, with the Chief Justice. In yesterday's interview with the president of the Bar Association, Priscilla Banner, she spoke about the Bar Association dissatisfaction with the delivering of judgments from the Chief Justice, and in fact requesting that he is able to keep up with his proposed schedule of delivering judgments, or there will be an official complaint put forward. Let me get your perspective on that.
Marlene, it's a very delicate
Yes.
topic. As you can imagine, the Chief Justice remains in office. He remains the Chief Justice. In fact, I leave from here to appear before the Chief Justice this morning. But the Bar Association, as an association, and we as members have obligations to our clients, to the state, to the judiciary. And this is a matter which I know that the Bar has been engaging a Chief Justice with for a number of years and seeking to have these judgments delivered. Unfortunately, they have not been delivered in a timely way, and so the Bar felt obliged, after engaging again in another bilateral discussion with the Chief Justice, to take the decision that it took, and I underscore that that was a unanimous decision of the members of the Bar. At the end of the day, we all hope that the Chief Justice will deliver the judgments as he has indicated. That is our hope, that is our expectation, and then we can work with the Chief Justice to restore the relationship between the Bar and the Chief Justice, and indeed the wider community. We all have clients. I mean, I had a client last week who has been waiting for quite a number of years on the phone to me, quite upset, and basically saying, what am I to do? What are you doing? What is going to happen? I said to him, well, the Bar is going to meet, and we are going to try and move things forward. So it is a real problem. The problem is being addressed, and I can only hope for a positive outcome in the shortest period of time.
Now, Senator Courtenay, each year at the opening of the Supreme Court, in the different addresses that are made by the Attorney General, by the Chief Justice, by the Bar Association, this has been a persistent problem, the delaying judgments. And it's from the Supreme Court right down. One of the common reasons cited for this issue is a lack of resources. Is this perhaps, is it justifiable?
Let's start with this, okay? I think we need to try and be positive. This is, as far as I am been able to discern, this is a problem that is unique to the Chief Justice. The other judges on the Supreme Court have been delivering judgments in a timely way. From time to time, there's always one or two judgments that are outstanding for more than 6 months or whatever. But as a general rule, the court is functioning in terms of delivery of justice and delivery of judgment on a timely basis. As I said, we are hoping, and genuinely and sincerely hoping, that the Chief Justice will be able to deliver the judgments, deliver them on time, and so that we can move forward to restore good relations. I don't believe that, to answer your question specifically, I don't believe that in this particular case, this particular problem is one of resources.
The current schedule is set forward is two judgments per week.
Yes.
Is the Bar Association satisfied with that particular schedule?
It's a schedule that the Chief Justice gave us. If he sticks to it, by the end of the year, all the judgments will be delivered, and that is good.
Yeah. Now, the fundamental issue here is justice delayed is justice denied.
Right.
And you have spoken about the concerns coming out from your clients, and we have seen some of the cases that are currently awaiting judgment, and they're very high-profile cases as well. Now, some may question whether the rush to deliver judgment will allow for a proper analysis of the cases that have been brought forward if the Chief Justice is to deliver 2 judgments per week.
Well, I think one of the things that is not yet in the public domain, but which one can disclose, is that the Chief Justice has indicated that he's going to take leave as of the beginning of October. So beginning in October until the judgments are delivered, the Chief Justice will not be sitting in court as a judge. He will be on leave, dedicating all his time to the finishing up of these judgments. So that is one way for us to hope that he will be able to do it and do it properly.
Now, in the larger scope of viewing this issue, the Belizean people must be reliant on our legal system when they feel that they've been wronged in any way. And the perception that perhaps there is a delay in justice doesn't bode well for people believing in this system. As a member of the legal fraternity, what do you say to the public? You seem very optimistic that the Chief Justice will be able to meet the schedule he has put out. How does one have a restored faith in the system?
By performance, by the court performing and delivering justice within a reasonable period of time. In 2005, the rules of the Supreme Court were changed. The old rules were kicked out, new rules were brought into force. And one of the underlying philosophy of the new rules was that it was no longer for the litigants to control the process of a trial. It was the court. And the rules have built in deadlines for things to happen so that the process moves swiftly. The whole purpose of that is that a person who files a claim knows when a statement of claim is required, when a defense is required, etc., etc. There's a process laid out, and only in exceptional circumstances will a court give you permission to depart from that. The end result and the expectation is that because that has moved along on that schedule, judgment will be given within a reasonable time thereafter. Regrettably, so far, that is where it has fallen down with respect to the Chief Justice. But I repeat, I remain positive, I remain hopeful that the Chief Justice will deliver as he has promised, and that litigants will get the justice that has so far been delayed.
Yeah. Well, moving on from that issue and staying within the same theme, of recent, there is the announcement of the appointment of Justice France Park to the Court of Appeal. And there has been quite a number of reactions coming out with this particular appointment from the Bar Association, from the opposition. Tell us as a member of the opposition and as the opposition senator, why this is an area of concern.
Marlene, I feel very strong about this issue, right? Mr. Park, in the absolute clearest terms, is unqualified to sit on the Court of Appeal of Belize. An unqualified judge cannot deliver justice. There is absolutely no justification, none whatsoever, for this proposed appointment. It will tend to undermine confidence in the judicial system. It will tend to undermine the rule of law in this country. The Prime Minister should rethink it. He should withdraw the nomination. I go one step further. In light of the reaction of the opposition, in light of the reaction of the bar, in light of the reaction of the network, Belizean network of NGOs, Mr. Park himself must ask himself if he can come into Belize from Florida and serve on our court where the opposition opposes his appointment, the NGOs oppose his appointment, the Bar Association oppose his appointment. It seems to me that the society is saying we have no confidence in Mr. Park, and I fully support that.
Now, let's be very clear as to the reasons behind this. We've heard two. One, that he's never worked in this jurisdiction, And secondly, that he was under investigation in Florida. Of these two reasons, which is the most dominant in opposing to this appointment?
Those, in my mind, are footnotes.
So what is the area?
Those
What is
are
the biggest
footnotes.
concern that you have?
We have a constitution, and the constitution in section 101, subsection 2, says that a person can be appointed to the Court of Appeal on the advice of the Prime Minister, given to the Governor General after consultation with the leader of the opposition. A person is qualified on two grounds. One, he's a judge in the Commonwealth, but we know he doesn't qualify on that ground. Secondly, that he has been admitted to practice for 15 years in Belize or in a Commonwealth country. There is no doubt that Mr. Park has been admitted to practice for more than 15 years. So on a superficial reading, one would say, well, 15 years, you qualify,
yes,
and therefore
you have the
appointed.
experience.
You hit the nail on the head. Firstly, the CCJ last year said in a judgment from Belize that what that section means is only high caliber candidates can be considered for appointment. What does that mean? It means that you must have experience in the law. You don't have to be a judge, but you have to have at least 15 years practice in the Commonwealth. You have to have experience. You have to distinguish yourself. You are sitting and judging the appeals of people. Now, Mr. Park is a Florida attorney. He has only 5 years of practice as a junior prosecutor straight out of law school in Jamaica. Since 1980, he has been living in Florida. For 10 years, between 1980 and 1990, he was in accounting. He after that, hold on, he after that qualified to practice in the United States of America in the state of Florida. He then became a state prosecutor, applying, studying Florida law. He then went into private practice and has been in private practice since then to today. This is a gentleman who has 32 years of legal practice. And out of that 32 years, 5 in the Commonwealth. 5 in the Commonwealth. I say to you, without the fear of contradiction, that he has experience in the law of Florida. A person who has experience in the law of Florida is unqualified by the criteria set by the highest court of Belize. And no one, including Mr. Dean Barrow, has the power to override what the CCJ has said.
Now, let me start off with the issue of the consultation with the opposition, which is typically laid out as how appointments are made. The Prime Minister makes an appointment, consults with the opposition, and then passes on that recommendation to the Governor General, which is normally a stamp of approval. If we are to follow what typically takes place in the country, the view of consultation is simply a matter of informing the opposition and proceeding with decisions as the Prime Minister has made it. So there is a possibility that Franz Park will in fact become a judge for the Court of Appeal. What are the possible recourses that the opposition or the Bar Association can potentially take? Or is there even a decision as to taking a next step if necessary?
I don't want to speak for anybody else on that issue. I could tell you what I will do. If Mr. Park appears on the Court of Appeal in any case in which I am involved for any client, I'm going to object. And I'm going to commence proceedings challenging him sitting on that court. Why? Marlene, stop and think about what we're talking about. If you had a case in Belize today, and you lost it in the Supreme Court and you wanted to appeal, would you pick up the phone and call Mr. Park in Florida and say, listen, I have a case in Belize. I know you don't know any law in Belize. I know you have not practiced for over 20 years in the Caribbean. I know you are an expert on the law of Florida, but I have a Belize law case. Would you come and represent me in Belize? I am sure you wouldn't. If you are involved in a matter, let us say a murder case, you're convicted of murder. Your appeal goes before a man who, you ask yourself, when last he practiced in Belize? Never. When last he practiced in the Caribbean? 1980. What has he been doing since then? Well, he has been an accountant, he has been working in the private sector, and he has been practicing Florida law. Do you believe that he is in a position to understand as an expert and deliver justice, to hear your case fairly and deliver justice to you? The answer is emphatically no. And there is no argument to be made to the contrary. When you look at the gentleman's curriculum vitae, it is thin, it is on a page and a third, double space in font 14. He has not distinguished himself. He does not enjoy the confidence of the bar, of the opposition. He does not enjoy the confidence of the NGOs of this country. And the reason is clear. He only came to the attention of the Prime Minister because they were classmates back in 1975. There is nothing that you look at his CV and say, well, this is a great lawyer, a judge, a great academic. Let's try to entice him and bring him to Belize. There is nothing that you can look at to see how he has distinguished himself. Let me just make this point. We are talking about the foundation of our democracy. Everybody, litigants, lawyers, must believe that they're getting a fair hearing.
Now, I want to.
And you cannot, Marlene, cannot get a fair hearing from someone who doesn't have experience in the law of the Commonwealth and in the law of Belize. Mr. Park does not. And if he has any self-respect, he should not accept the appointment. The appointment has not been completed as yet. He should not accept it.
Now, I just want to be absolutely clear for viewers. And you keep on speaking of his experience in Florida versus the limited amount of time he has spent working within the Caribbean, in Jamaica specifically, for 5 years. And the issue is that the laws are different, or judicial systems are completely different. And that is where the core of your point is coming from, right?
Marlene, I have never received a call from anybody saying to me, I have a case in Florida. You're a lawyer in Belize. I want you to come to Florida and do my case. I have never received a call from anybody, and I don't know of any Belizean attorney who has been called by the judicial authorities of Florida and say, we're looking for a Court of Appeal judge to apply the law of Florida, and we want a Belize lawyer to come to Florida and sit as our Court of Appeal judge. Why in the name of God are we doing the reverse? Why in the name of God have we chosen a gentleman who is a practitioner in Florida to come and sit in our Court of Appeal to deliver justice?
Now, Senator Courtenay, the current status for this appointment is that the opposition has voiced their concern. The Belize network of NGOs has expressed their concerns. You are verbally expressing your concern. However, we have heard nothing from the Prime Minister. Has there been an official contact made outside of press releases to the office of the Prime Minister to get a response as to whether or not he will rethink the appointment?
Well, I don't know what anybody has done. I know that the leader of the opposition had written to the Prime Minister saying, we have looked at this CV, we don't see a basis for the appointment. Can you provide us with more information? And the Prime Minister's response was, his CV is what it is what it is. That's it. the leader of the opposition wrote to the Prime Minister and said, I oppose. I assume the Prime Minister proceeded and told the GG, notwithstanding the opposition, I want him appointed. What we have here at the end of the day is this: a power given to the Prime Minister, a power under the Constitution to nominate a person to be a judge of the Court of Appeal after consultation. Fortunately, we live in a country where we have a court that you can go and challenge that decision, because not because you have the power, you can exercise it how you want. It has to be exercised consistent with the power and authority that is expected. And as I said, the CCJ has spoken about this matter. In fact, the CCJ went further. The CCJ was dissatisfied with that same Section 101 and made recommendations to take away the power from the Prime Minister to do this. It is regrettable that that judgment was given in February of this year, and the government has still not sought to amend the Constitution the way in which the CCJ recommended. Had they done that, it would have been before an independent tribunal, and I am confident that if a Florida attorney applies to an independent tribunal to be appointed a Court of Appeal judge in Belize, it would be rejected. And rightly so. I say this appointment, this proposed appointment, does not give confidence. It undermines the rule of law. It is simply going to invite litigation and controversy. We have an opportunity to avoid it. There are many distinguished lawyers, there are many distinguished retired judges who are available and prepared to serve on our Court of Appeal, who are expert and qualified. We do not want, we do not need, nor do we deserve someone who is going to learn on the job. Belize is better than that.
Are there any options other than law to that the Bar Association or the opposition may use before the appointment is made final?
Yeah, you can go to court and challenge it. I'm hoping that someone will decide that they want to challenge it. We as a country, we're in the month of September. We have to resist. We have to stand up. We have to say, do what is right. Right? The bar took a very tough decision, very, very tough decision last week. Didn't want to do it, but it felt out of a sense of duty and obligation that it had to, right? And a lot of people are saying, do you really have to do it? Well, we had tried for a long time and we're forced into that situation. The same thing with this. We should not allow the Prime Minister to exercise this power as if it is a personal power, as if it is a personal gift and reward to his friend. That is not what this is. And what is worse, the proposed appointment is for 5 years. Can't be right.
Well, Senator Courtenay, you've definitely made clear your position on this issue, and it is one shared by the Bar Association and the opposition. The issue I think that people oftentimes don't pay attention to or don't fully understand is how it affects them personally. And as you have pointed out, any person who goes through the court system and is not satisfied with their judgment will have to access the Court of Appeal, and there must be some sense of trust in the judgment that they will be able to get from an experienced judge, and that would be a role that France Park would be put in.
Right.
Now I want to, in the interest of time, I want to move on to some other issues, and another I know that is very much an area that you have put a lot of work in is, of course, looking at the situation with Guatemala. As recent as this weekend, we have had issues in the Sarstoon once again. You have asserted that what is taking place in the Sarstoon is essentially an annexation of a portion of Belize. And what Belizeans are saying is very simple. We need to do more in the Sarstoon, we need to be able to have a very firm position on what is taking place in the South. What is your reaction to the news of what took place in the Sarstoon over the weekend?
I regard what happened on the weekend in the Sarstoon as a military invasion of Belizean territory, pure and simple. A military invasion of Belizean territory. As far as I'm aware, you can correct me if I'm wrong, up until now, there has been no public statement from the government of Belize in response to it. I have no idea whether they have done anything diplomatically. What I would say is this: it is unacceptable. The government of Belize, in my opinion, is in dereliction of duty. The highest duty of any government is to defend the territorial integrity of Belize, to uphold the Constitution, which defines our territory. I cannot for the life of me understand why the territorial volunteers publicly stated what they were going to do. Everybody knew it. I have to ask the question, what did the government do about it? We all know that the Guatemalans hate Wilmehir. The government's attitude is that Wilmehir and the volunteers are provocateurs. They go there and they provoke the Guatemalans. Well, even if Wilmehir a bad picnic, he has rights. Even if he's a bad picnic, we have a country with a government that has a duty to protect its citizens, good or bad. So you cannot order the Coast Guard and the BDF to stay in base where Belizeans are in kayaks and canoes at risk because of the activity of an enemy, of being overturned, possibly drowned or injured, and sit idly by. That is a government that has betrayed its country. What can be done? I am not calling for any type of military response. Be clear. But it seems to me that you know a flashpoint is going to occur. The Guatemalans are not going to like it. I would expect serious diplomatic efforts being taken to ensure that the Guatemalans stay in base and the Belizeans stay in base. I would expect serious efforts being made to ensure that the Guatemalans, military or otherwise, do not come into our territory. I would expect the Belize Defense Force and the Coast Guard, seeing what was taking place there, would leave their base and go and escort the Belizeans in a non-confrontational way and seek to engage with their counterparts in Guatemala and say, back off. There was no risk to Guatemala, there was no threat to Guatemala, and what they did was an act of aggression of the most heinous type.
Well, what they have been doing is exerting control over the Sarstoon. And I want to be the foreign minister on the show a few weeks ago following the crisis in Guatemala and in other media interviews as well, spoke of this being a very critical time. And that now, more than ever, Belizeans must be very careful about their interactions when in Guatemala or in anything that may cause a upset. And I want to hear, I mean, this particular statement, in addition to others, has really upset the Belizean public. That our foreign minister is saying, well, you know, be careful if you're in Guatemala, be careful how you interact in these particular areas because we don't want to give them more fuel for their fire.
It is the continuation of his policy of appeasement. It is a continuation of his policy of bowing and genuflecting to the Guatemalans. The bromance that he had with Carlos Raul is unacceptable. It is unacceptable. We have been involved in this when we were in government for a long time. And believe me, I have been in meetings where it gets that tense that the OAS calls off the meeting and we sit around in different rooms for hours because it is so tense. We are stating our position without reservation, forcefully, and Guatemala is doing the same, and you realize that this is likely to get out of control. People move away. But we endure. We don't lose sight of what the objective is. And diplomacy is oftentimes very hard, but you must be skillful. And when you show weakness, your enemies take advantage. You must operate in such a way as to build alliances that support you, because we are weaker than Guatemala militarily, but we are stronger than them and used to be stronger than them diplomatically. And regrettably, that is where we're falling down today, consistently so. We still do not have a protocol in the Sarstoon, and the foreign minister seems to be okay with that.
Now, diplomacy is the reason cited very often for what seems to be carefully worded phrases that the foreign minister uses. Words that, based on the exact definition, the foreign minister stands by when he says artificial border, meaning a man-made border, or internationally recognized borders, which means Guatemala as a foreign entity does not recognize the border. Now, he will argue, if he received here, that these are factually right. However, it is not something that Belizeans appreciate hearing, whether we pull out our dictionaries or not. As a former foreign minister, I want to get your reaction to the specific terminologies used by Minister Elrington when talking about the Belize-Guatemala border.
The foreign minister repeatedly says that the Belize doesn't have internationally recognized borders because there's a dispute with Guatemala. The foreign minister is wrong. As a matter of fact, he's wrong as a matter of law, and the Prime Minister should put him in check. The Prime Minister should correct him. The Prime Minister should tell him to shut up. Marlene, it is a disgrace. It is a shame that we have this document called the Legal Opinion on Guatemala's Territorial Claim to Belize, issued in 2002, 15 years ago, and it seems to me that the foreign minister has not read it. Yet he's around Belize and around the world, supposedly representing Belize and articulating something that is completely contrary to what our experts have advised. It is a disgrace.
Let me ask you, what is the risk of having Belize and our representative speak of our borders in the way that Minister Elrington does, internationally?
It confuses the people who voted for Belize's independence. It confuses the people who recognize Belize with all its territory. It confuses legal experts for whom hundreds of thousands of dollars have been paid to produce an expert opinion that says the complete contrary. To listen to the highest representative of Belize say that what we all know to be a fact and as a matter of law to be so, he says is not so. I want to quote from this legal opinion, all right? This was issued, as I said, in 2002, 15 years, and apparently he has not read it. First of all, in 1980, the General Assembly met, all right? And you will recall that 75 to 80 was the internationalization process, and the last resolution was passed in 1980, calling for Belize to become independent by the time the General Assembly met in 1981. And the 1980 resolution 3520 said, recognizing the special responsibility of the United Kingdom as the administering power to take immediate steps to enable the people of Belize to exercise freely without fear their right to the secure and full independence of all their territory. One, reaffirm the inalienable right of the people of Belize to self-determination, independence, and territorial integrity, and urges all states to render all practical assistance necessary for the secure and early exercise of that right with all our territory. And it repeats throughout the right to territorial integrity, and that we should go to independence with all our territory. This is what the experts said. They refer to all the resolutions and they say, talking about what is the effect of a resolution passed admitting a country to the United Nations. And speaking about Belize, it says, but in this case, there is an exceptional added element of definition or recognition of the borders of the state so admitted. The multiple resolutions of the United Nations quoted above in referring to, quote, all the territory, unquote, and to the, quote, territorial integrity, unquote, of Belize within borders inviolable and intact, do appear to define or recognize those borders. The resolutions indicate that the General Assembly, in implementing its authority, enunciated in Resolution 1514, has promoted the self-determination and independence of a colonial territory within the whole of the colonial borders of that territory. Finally, listen to this. But in the end, it was Guatemala alone that failed to support the resolutions affirming the territorial integrity of Belize, inviolable and intact within the traditional borders, and Guatemala alone voted against the admission of Belize to membership in the United Nations. Belize was admitted as a member of the United Nations in 1981, having acceded to statehood on September 21st, 1981. While the resolution admitting it does not refer to the geographical extent of the state so admitted, nor do the resolutions admitting other members, antecedent resolutions make it plain that in the view of virtually every member of the United Nations apart from Guatemala, the borders of Belize are those that obtained under British rule. In light of these resolutions and the debates that led to their adoption, it may be concluded that the international community recognizes the state of Belize as comprising the whole of the land territory which Belize maintains that its borders encompass. Something is radically wrong with the foreign minister. Radically wrong with the foreign minister when he goes about the place saying that our borders are not internationally recognized, when we have expert opinions, highly qualified, world-renowned experts concluding as a matter of law advice to Belize the complete contrary. And we have a prime minister who has a master's in international relations who remains silent. We condemn it. We call on the Prime Minister on the 21st of September 2017 to speak to the world clearly, saying that we are free, we are independent, and that our borders are internationally recognized. We demand that the Prime Minister instruct Wilfred Elrington when he goes to the United Nations this year in his speech to declare to all that our borders are internationally recognized. And finally, we call on Wilfred Elrington, 1, to desist from lying, 2, apologize to the country, and thirdly, resign. This is a matter of highest national importance. This is not a matter to be playing with. This is not a matter to be making mistakes with. This is about the territorial integrity of our country, which we all love. He is wrong. In fact, he is wrong in law. He should desist. He should be removed. He should be quiet.
Well, Senator Courtenay, this is definitely not the first time there has been a call for the removal or the resignation of Minister Elrington. And as you have pointed out, the Prime Minister has not made any statement on what Minister Elrington has said. Now, I want to put this into context. The conversation, oftentimes, the general conversation that we're having that leads to these particular statements is about going to the ICJ. And it seems that oftentimes the words used by Minister Ellerington are a part of reaching that end goal, which is to get Belizeans to vote yes to going to the ICJ. Now, the People's United Party has been a part of this process up until very recent, where the decision or the position has been put out that you no longer support going to the ICJ because of actions by Guatemala and because of the current state of affairs. Having been involved in the process and having encouraged and promoted this as the best possible route for Belize to go to settle the territorial dispute, why change the position now?
First of all, I'm not sure that we would say that going to the ICJ is the best route. What we would say, and the distinction is important, what we would say is that the only way to solve it is by going to the ICJ, right? Why do we say that? Because negotiations have failed and negotiations will not provide a solution. So if you want to solve it, then the only place to go is the only international court in the world that can resolve it. That is completely different from whether you should go there. That is completely different from deciding when you should go there. The view of the party is that, one, the Belizean people should have the say, and the only say that matters on this issue, whether they want it resolved by the ICJ. We believe that when that referendum is held, we only have one chance. You cannot have a referendum, it fails, and 3-4 years later ask people the same question again. So, if as a nation we decide that we want to go to the ICJ, that decision can only be taken after an education campaign and a political campaign by all political parties for and against, all social groups and bodies in the society for and against, having an informed debate and campaign on the issue, and then we take a decision. What the People's United Party has said in recent years is the way in which Wilfred Ellerington, the way in which the United Democratic Party has been managing this issue. We do not have confidence. One, when you have, for example, as I just proved, this man talking about us borders not being internationally recognized, we don't have confidence that the United Democratic Party, under the leadership of Wilfred Ellerington as Foreign Minister, is in a position, one, to conduct the level of education, campaign, and exercise that is required. The ability to engage lawyers, the ability to engage the diplomatic community, to advance our case in such a way that we will remove as far as possible any possibility of us losing. And if we don't have that confidence, we cannot tell the Belizean people that now is the time to go out and vote yes in such a referendum. We just don't have the confidence of this government. And as long as we have someone like Wilfred Ellerington leading this process, misinforming Belizean people, misstating the case for Belize, undermining our position legally and diplomatically, the People's United Party is not going to be a part of it. We have said repeatedly, let us have a negotiating team across parties. Let us have a joint effort of experts. The government, for its own selfish reasons, wrongly in my view, has rejected that. Well, we are on the outside, and as far as we are concerned, the country is not being prepared properly, and we are not going to join the effort.
Well, couldn't it be argued that you have chosen to be on the outside as the opposition? We have had CEO Andrews and Minister Ellerington here saying that they still send out invitations to the opposition when this particular issue is being addressed. And we have seen where, as a part of the position, you have chosen no longer to participate in the process.
First of all, what are we talking about? Which invitation?
No, the question is whether you have chosen to be
Which
on the
invitation has Mr. Elrington or Mr. Andrews given to
whenever
people?
there is a meeting discussing the Belize Guatemala issue. Minister Elrington informed us that he has instructed CEO Andrews that the opposition is always informed and invited when it comes to this matter.
Well, I was hoping you were going to laugh, because clearly that's a joke.
Why would it be
I
a joke?
am the person designated by the leader of the opposition to be the representative.
And you are saying you've never received any future invitations since the PUP has put out their position saying that they will no longer be involved in the process?
None.
Okay. Well, both happened on live TV, so we'll see which is the truth.
Absolutely not.
But my point is this, Senator Courtenay. If you say you are now on the outside, it was a position that was taken by the opposition.
It was a principled position.
It is similar to the walkout of the House, if it can be, if we can draw a parallel. It's choosing to not participate even if in disagreement.
Yeah, well, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. And I don't want to disclose anything that is secret, right? Eamon Courtenay, and I know Asad Shoman, and I'm speaking of specific events. I am not going to sit at any diplomatic table in any conference as a part of a Belize delegation where our interests are not being protected forcefully across the table. I'm not going to do it. Diplomatic rules preclude me as an opposition member on a Belize delegation where the minister is present from speaking. And if I can't speak when that is happening, I'm not going to be there. And I know Assad feels the same thing, and I know that there was a big dispute and disagreement with Minister Elrington because Assad said to hell with it, and he spoke out. So let me tell you something, and let me be clear. When we say we withdraw for a reason, because we are not going to be a part of it.
So what is the message to Belizeans at this point?
That we call on the government to have a more enlightened approach to this issue. We call on the government to have around the table people who have expertise and knowledge on this issue. We call on the government to stand down from its position of arrogance and join hands not only with the opposition but with others. There are many experts around in Belize who have been involved in this process, who are ready and willing to assist, to represent the country, to provide advice, to do research, to work on it. Asad Shoman being one. But it has to be done in a way where we sit down and prepare properly for meetings. We can't, as I have experienced, sit down 1 hour before a meeting is to start and open a piece of paper that is blank and say, well, what are we going to say? That is unacceptable.
Earlier, in your response to the incident that took place in the south with the territorial volunteers, you spoke of 3 positions or 3 suggested reactions from Belize. One included the resignation of Minister Elrington. You've spoken about a loss of confidence in his capacity to be able to represent Belize. Will the opposition be willing to return to that table if it is still being led by Minister Elrington?
It would not be the preferred position, but we are prepared to perform our duty if the rules of engagement are clear. If the rules of engagement are clear, if Minister Elrington is prepared to have us on board in good faith, communications are open, documents and things are being shared before they are sent, positions are discussed and debated and agreed upon. If we have that type of culture, a return to that culture. Marlene, let us not forget the history of this thing. We appointed Fred Martinez, a UDP minister, as our ambassador in Guatemala. So that across the political divide, we work as a united team for this country. We had many differences, strong arguments, but at the end of the day, you sit down and say, we have to have a common position, and you reach a common position, and you articulate it in a meeting. You are sent as a messenger to different capitals to try to cultivate relations and to do things in the interest of the country. But we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. This is not something new. We used to do this. We have experience in doing, and there is no reason when Guatemala has adopted the posture that it has over the last few years, why we are not resolving as a nation to do the best we can to defend our country. It is regrettable, I say it is regrettable, where we are in Belize on this issue at this time.
Taking a look at it from what is currently taking place in Guatemala, there's uncertainty. What had first been predicted to have the referendum by the end of this year, we're not quite sure whether or not that will proceed. And Belize is looking to possibly have the referendum by the end of next year or the early the following year. What needs to be done during that time if we are to keep that timeline?
First of all, I repeat, I think it was a huge mistake for us to have the protocol to the special agreement so that the referendum could be held on different days. That's a mistake. Secondly, we know President Morales is a disaster in Guatemala. Forget it. There will be no referendum in Guatemala anytime soon. They have officially suspended their educational campaign. So we know that ain't going to happen. Mm-hmm. Insofar as Belize is concerned, we need re-registration. That's, people are on that list who should not have a say.
Well, it has been indicated that the referendum will only take place after the re-registration.
Well, there are many things that have been said and not been done.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's have it done. Secondly, as I said, there are many things on the ground, Sarstoon, Chiquibull, that need to be addressed before we even start to talk about preparing a country for a referendum. If facts on the ground are not conducive to people voting freely, or people saying what we don't want, and I respect whatever decision any Belizean takes, what we don't want is an emotional reaction. Yes? Mm-hmm. I was yesterday at a lunch, and this issue came up, and I was reminding the people there that the last 3 referenda held in the Caribbean, St. Vincent, Grenada, Bahamas, all failed. All failed. And in each one of them, it was deepening and broadening the rights of people, but an emotional reaction. For example, in the case of the Bahamas, the question came up about gender equality and whether or not it would be allowed same-sex marriage. That was not what the law said, but the church in the Bahamas reacted that way, and their parishioners voted. Something that everybody thought was going to pass failed. Grenada, St. Vincent, the same thing. The point I make is this. Something that looks good on paper, the reaction of people when there is uncertainty, when there is doubt, when there is a lack of confidence, people react with their gut rather than with their minds. And I do not believe that we are anywhere near ready for people to make an informed decision in this country on a matter that is existential, a matter that will determine the geographical future of this country. We need a complete sea change. Leadership in foreign ministry, leadership in the Belize Guatemala issue. We need a serious education campaign. We need Chiquibull to be dealt with. We need the Sarstoon to be dealt with. We need Guatemala that is ready. We need Guatemala that is acting honorably. It's going to take a long time. But what I ask you, have you heard of a plan?
A plan?
From the government.
For the education campaign?
Any and everything.
Well, they say the education campaign is taking place in the schools. I have one final question on this issue. As an attorney, do you believe that the best way for us to handle the Belize-Guatemala dispute, if not now, maybe in the future, is to go to the ICJ?
I think the best way is to resolve it diplomatically by negotiations. We went through the facilitation exercise which ended in 2004. And remember, the proposals were put by the facilitators. Some effort can be made to revisit that, to try to talk to our new Guatemalan government and say, listen, let's look at this and see if we can change it. Let's see if we can tweak it and see if we can resolve this matter by negotiations.
Okay.
That is where the zero risk is. No, there's a reality. It's extremely unlikely. And so if you decide as a citizen that, you know, I want to bring this to an end, the only way to do it is to go to the court. But if you ask me what is the preferred option is a negotiated treaty.
Returning to negotiations.
Return to negotiations.
Okay. Well, with that, I want to thank you for sitting down with me this morning to be able to discuss these issues. We can see how very passionate you are about both of them, and we have heard not only the position of the PUP, but also your personal position on many of these issues. Thank you once again.
Marlene, thank you, but I just want to take this opportunity to strongly condemn the violent and vicious, unwarranted attack on the media, specifically Marisol Amaya. I condemn Minister Elrington saying that the media was enjoying it. It is ridiculous. We call on the Prime Minister to issue a public apology. We must be big enough and man enough to do what is right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we will have a short video clip including pieces of our final interview with Right Honorable George Price.